this was a movie that wasn't necessarily on my radar or interest or speculation that I wanted to give a shit about, honestly. I really didn't care when I first saw the title, the trailer. I mean, none of it stood out to me. I mean, I had no interest at all. But when it came down to sit down and actually watching it, which was an unexpected watch for me, where it was on the television and I ended up seeing it, let's just say I'm kind of glad that I saw this. Where do I even begin with this movie? Well, it's a simple title. It's named after a woman's name, which is common in the music industry, where if you get a woman's name, it'll end up becoming a successful smash hit. In the film industry, well, it depends exactly what the story is going to be about. If it's going to be about a woman or a particular key factor of a character or a male, well, it all depends on the writing and how it's going to be presented. And let's just say this is one of those films where it's named after a woman's name, but you got yourself a premise, which is very simple, straightforward to the point, and there's a lot of creativity that is being played in effect within this movie itself. And I'm just going to say this right off the bat with no beating around the bush. This is basically like one of those movies that would have been made in the 80s. And that's saying a lot for me right there, because for someone like me who loves the 80s horror, well, this is one of those films that I would definitely see that in. Now, the dudes who ended up making that movie, Ready or Not, Tyler Gillette and Matt Bettolini Olfian. I probably butchered the name, but you get my gist. Those dudes ended up making Ready or Not, and nobody is a stranger to know that I'm not a fan of that movie whatsoever. That movie breaks all logic. It has a ridiculous story that makes no sense whatsoever, and I just thought that film was just absolutely overrated to the T. But the thing is that there are other movies I've not necessarily seen their other ones except for Ready or Not and this one itself. And I will say, this was definitely a horror movie that was well worth watching. Because, let me tell you all right now, in terms of the story itself, well, like I said, it's got a basic plot to it. It's literally a bunch of criminals who get together, ending up at this billionaire's home, who basically holds the owner's little girl hostage, and her name is Abigail, and they're basically holding her for some amount of money. Now, as for that later on, not everything what it seems to be in terms of who Abigail is. Now, Abigail herself, when the crooks ended up capturing this poor little girl, she's all scared. She's holding her teddy bear. She doesn't know what to do, what to think, or what to say, or how to even react. But the one chick named Joey, she tries to buddy up with Abigail, trying to tell her everything's going to be okay. We just need your daddy's information, his money, his wallet, his fucking checkbook, and all the other stuff. And a little girl, like I said, Alicia Weir, who actually did a very good job playing as Abigail, both playing as that cliched, innocent little girl, while playing ruthless, badass vampire, which I will get to. But basically, Joey's trying to be buddies with Abigail and all that and everything. But once the arguments and tensions start to transpire, that's where Abigail shows her true colors of who she really is. She's not exactly a sweet, innocent, cute little girl that she is. She is a blood-sucking, thirsty, about 607-year-old fucking vampire who's in the body of a little girl. Well, let's just say this film was a lot of fun to watch, and let me get to the exact reason why. Well, I will say that the story, it was literally explained within reason why Abigail ended up capturing these criminals in her house. Dean, Joey, Peter, Frank, Sammy. There was quite a bit of actors and actresses. I mean, all the performances, some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. I knew who Kevin Durand is. Usually a lot of the roles that he's given are being a big, dumb guy in some films, like, for example, Wild Hogs. But in this film, he was definitely given one of those roles to where he was adding to a little bit of levity and comedic effect. That was supposed to be, in my mind, unintentionally funny, but I had a couple laughs from some of the dialogue. Stupid, yes, but for some reason I ended up getting tickled by some of his dialogue. And the other actor who stood out for me in this film, who I think deserves a lot more fucking praise in the film industry, who deserves much more leading roles, whether he's going to be a babyface or a fucking heel, that is Dan Stevens. This dude is a badass. He is a handsome looking guy. He's got a presentation to him. Visually, if you look at him, he may have that baby face to him, but what makes him stand out is that he's got the tone. He knows how to present himself. He knows how to make himself look like a badass. He knows how to be portrayal as a serious actor, and he's got the fucking look of a badass action star. And I'll give you an example of a movie that he was phenomenal in. Look at The Guest. He was fantastic in that movie. That was one of the, if not mistaken, one of the leading roles that he had. Phenomenal. I think Dan Stevens is an actor who deserves a lot more credit in the film industry, and he deserves a lot more leading roles. Honestly, if there was an idea where you would have to make a prequel James Bond film, where before you had Daniel Craig or Sean Connery, but just the idea of a prequel James Bond film, I think Dan Stevens would be a good candidate for a young James Bond. But that's just my thought right there. For voice acting, I think he would do a phenomenal job playing as a villain. Like, if there was like some sort of Batman animated series or a Batman movie that is in the works that's animated, I think he would do a good job playing as either the Riddler or voicing as the Joker. But then again, that's just one man's thoughts. I want to see Dan Stevens more in movies. I absolutely loved him. He, to me, was the best character in the entire movie. He was a lot of fun. I loved his presentation. I loved his dialogue. Especially when he transformed into a vampire later on. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And you know what? If they ever made another vampire movie, I would love to see him in it again. Playing as a bad guy, specifically. But anyways, no more going on about Dan Stevens. I've already said enough about him. As for the story itself, it's simple and effective. And the thing is that all these criminals have an exact reason why they are there. It's not just for the cliche of ransom and holding their money and everything, or wanting a particular sum for capturing the billionaire's daughter. No. It's because there's reasons. They all have their own reasons. They've all have their own baggage of why they're there. They got their own indictments that they have done. And Abigail later explains on, when she's captured, she's literally explaining later on why she brought them all together. That's where the twist of the film comes into effect, which was very creative in its own merit. Because the thing is that she's telling them exactly, she's literally calling them out, all of them out on their bullshit of all the crimes that they have done, lies and disputes that they have committed. And basically, it's nothing more but a game of hide and seek for these criminals. Instead of them being the bad guys, well, instead of them being the bad guys, good guys, whatever it is basically a little switched up. Great stuff. But as for some of the performances, Kevin Durant, I already said my thoughts about him. The actress who played as Joey, I thought she was alright for what she was. Catherine Newton, she was one of the characters to where I somewhat tolerated, but I wasn't necessarily interested in. I didn't really care for her dialogue or her presentation that much, but then again, that's just me. I wasn't necessarily that invested with her particular character. But here's another thing, though, that I absolutely like, is that this is a horror film that wasn't necessarily to be taken serious. This was literally a horror film that you would have yourself a good time with, have a laugh with your girlfriend or your buddies, and you just be having a blast. The thing is that this movie, it's somewhat reminding me of The Lost Boys to a minor extent. As for why it reminds me of The Lost Boys, it's not because of the whole vampire concept, but the fact that you got yourself either one or two characters or a group, just the whole entire presentation of the vampires, where they got a look and approach and some mannerisms that really make them stand out, especially some sort of sly humor that they have. And later on, when they start fighting in the kills, mixture of practical and CGI effects, and once again, I said it before, a little humor was tossed in. Something that you see in like a campy or very low budgeted or basically like a guilty pleasure horror film that's literally deliberately put out there for you to have fun with. But yeah, this film really took me by surprise a lot. I already said some of the flaws, that some of the personalities I couldn't necessarily grasp with, along with the characteristics. The beginning of the film itself, it's right there, but the thing is, I was kind of tuning out just a little bit because it was kind of going to a cliche route. Once again, criminals capturing little girl gets all upset and cliche. But once the whole entire main element of the movie kicked in, that's where I was invested, and I was having the time of my life watching this. Now, I was really surprised with this movie because, like I said earlier, I didn't think I was going to have a big investment or enjoyment or even care. I had a few laughs. It was a simple story. Lots of blood, action, logical reasons that blend with folklore, especially the whole story of vampires and everything and how they date back to the test of times, how many centuries ago, how that's able to connect. Stuff like that is what's interesting to me. When there's explanations and interest, that's what really gets my attention to witnessing a film like that. So, all I can say about Abigail is that this movie was awesome. It was a lot of fun. I really praise it a lot. So, as for the film itself and what I gave it a solid 4 out of 5. I had a lot of fun with it. So, folks, I'm going to stop babbling right now. Let me know down below your thoughts about Abigail. And with that being said, where's my remote? Here it is. Ciao for now.